So, Wits University says it will reopen tomorrow despite calls from the Student Representative Council that the academic year be further delayed. In fact, the SRC is demanding that a funding crisis for the financially excluded students be resolved amongst other grievances. The university's management held a meeting with the SRC this week, we're told, but they couldn't necessarily reach an agreement. For an idea of the state of play as it stands, let's bring in Shirona Patel. She's the Wits University spokesperson, joining us now via our video link. So, Shirona, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the problem at this point is twofold. One, SRC members are saying that issues around resources for students need to be ironed out before the academic program gets underway. And two, issues around accommodation for, I imagine, the same students need to be sorted out before the academic year gets underway. Are you in a position to tell us whether these issues can be ironed out in less than 24 hours?
Yes, so thank you, and thanks for giving us the chance to respond. So I actually wish that Newzroom Afrika would send down journalists to the campus today. I'm on campus today, and I can tell you that 35,000 out of Wits' 37,500 students have registered already. If we look at the first issue, the issue of financial exclusions, the SRC claims that 8,000 students will be financially excluded. This is not true, and I wish that journalists would actually interrogate some of the numbers put forward by the students. Now, Wits University has done a few things in order to accommodate as many students as possible. And I would like to emphasize that where there are genuine cases, where students really have had a hardship or a hard time, Wits University is committed to helping those students. However, we can't provide free education, which is what the SRC is asking us for at the moment. We can't and don't have the ability or the resources to provide free education for all students. So some of the concessions that Wits has made and some of the goodwill that we've shown towards the students is as follows. For this year, we've created a Wits Hardship Fund. That's 10 million rand, which goes to assist students who experience hardship with registration and accommodation fees. Secondly, we've put in place another 10 million rand, so that gives us 20 million rand now. That's for a Wits COVID-19 relief fund, and that's also to help students whose families have been affected by the pandemic and to help these students to register. Now, the majority of our students have registered online. The remaining 2,000 or so are really postgraduate students. We have 2 more intakes later in the year, and those are the outstanding students. Finally, the university, we cover about 27,000 out of its 37,000 students have some form of financial aid, bursary, scholarship. And I challenge Newzroom Afrika to go and ask any other university in the country whether they can put 1 billion rand on the table and say they administer 1 billion rand in financial aid, scholarships and bursaries, out of which 100 million rand comes from Wits' own coffers directly. So I think we've done whatever we can to help students and to help students to register. There is always a need for more funding, and it's for that reason that we are supporting the SRC with a 21 million rand campaign to raise 21 million rand in 2021 to assist students. There's always a need for more. But as Wits University, we've basically gone the extra mile to assist with the concessions, to find funding for students and to help them as far as we can on the financial side.
Right.
Do you want me to carry on accommodation? I'm happy to answer that question.
Briefly, just so we can make sure we put all the questions we need to you before we run out of time, but sure. Briefly, go ahead.
So briefly, we've accommodation at Wits. I'm on campus now, and I can tell you that students, those who've been accompanied by their families, etc., are all settling in. Now, in terms of our COVID-19 regulations, we can only have a certain number of students back on campus so that we don't become a super spreader or hotspot. We are thus bringing back, in total, about 4,500 students in this order. So we're giving preference to first-year students just because they can better manage the transition from secondary school to tertiary education if we have first years on campus. Secondly, faculties who need students back, for example, health sciences students who need to be here so that they can help in clinics and hospitals and on the front line, they'll be brought back. Thirdly, students who are experiencing difficulties at home, where they have difficult learning environments and can't study at home, we're allowing them to come back to our residences. I'm on campus, and I can safely tell you I've spoken to the head of campus housing and residence life, and students who've arrived here today and their families have all been accommodated.
All right. I think it's important to point out, Shirona, that it's not about whether or not Wits is performing the best in comparison to any other university, but it's about whether or not Wits University is in a position where people can come and learn safely tomorrow. From the people we've spoken to, that appears to be under threat, and that's why we're getting you to try and clarify these issues. So I just wanted to make that point. That said, is the impression then that you're trying to give to us today that what the SRC is saying is untrue, and therefore they're just going out of their way to destabilize the academic program for the sake of it?
No, so I'm not saying, and I'm not making any accusations against the SRC here. What I am saying is that these are the facts. And the fact is that if you actually sent a journalist to campus now, and if you came and looked at our registration stats, you would see that the majority of students have registered. So maybe interrogate the 8,000 number that the SRC does put before you. Now, it's not about what Wits is doing. We're doing whatever we can for our students. And we want as many students as possible to register. The counter to that is that if we allow everybody who has historical debt, who's ever owed the university money, to register and grant free education to all, we would not become sustainable. So yes, people could come in, could learn for this year, but Wits won't be standing next year then. We have a finite amount of money. We've got finite resources. So the call for free education shouldn't be made to Wits' management only. It should be made to the Ministry of Higher Education. They're really the ones who are empowered to give free education. We can't.
Yeah, but I mean, Shirona, let's not be disingenuous about this. We know that for many students, you are the face of the establishment. And of course, if they had issues, it's more likely that they'll bring it to your door than trying to bring it to the minister's door. I mean, you're most accessible. The question becomes, how are you, at the very least, going out of your way to ensure that there's the level of stability that you need in order to ensure that tomorrow doesn't turn out to be a replay of the scenes we saw sometime in 2016?
So, number one, tomorrow, our entire academic program, the majority of it is online. It's going online. So most students are studying from wherever they are. We've invested in a new learning management system. We've given data and devices to students so that they can study from wherever they are. We've made, like I said, a number of concessions to help students to register. So if we're giving R1 billion, administering R1 billion in financial aid, scholarships and bursaries, that's how we're helping our students. If we're giving R100 million from our own money to help students to register, that's how we're helping students. We're creating hardship funds. We're fundraising with the SRC. We're talking to the private sector. We are doing as much as we can to help as many students as possible to register. I also don't like how you're framing it, that it's Wits' students versus Wits' management. We care about these students. These are our students, and we want the very best for them. We want them to succeed. We want them to register. That's our intention. All I'm saying is that we don't have the capability or resources to offer free education, which is the demand that's been made by the SRC of us.
It's not my framing, Shirona. It's the indictment being placed by the students we've spoken to. But thanks for giving us your side of the story. It's a development we'll continue to monitor, no doubt, especially as we lead up to that all-important date tomorrow when the academic year is set to begin. Shirona Patel, it's Wits University spokesperson. Once again, appreciate your time on the program.